Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and we're going to continue on in episode 64, dealing with the Russian warship sinking by some drone, supposedly from the Ukrainian forces. I suspect it's maybe special forces that helped this along. And maybe cursory view what's going on in the news about with Putin and Trump and their perspectives. You know, a lot has happened in the news in the last 24 hours. So let's play Times Radio, Putin's Crimea warship destroyed by Ukrainian drone, supposedly. All right. But before we start, make sure that you subscribe to all my channels. I have 3 channels on YouTube: Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Also subscribe to my X channel and my GETTR channel. By doing that, you'll get notified of when I release something or important links. In addition, please make sure, I can't say this enough, please make sure that you subscribe to all 6 channels. The 3 YouTube channels, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. I am heavily censored on YouTube, and I need your support.
Of asymmetrical approach, which is probably the key approach to destroy Russian army and to protect Ukraine and to obtain victory. So, the vessel has been destroyed by unmanned surface vessel, Ukrainian sea drone, which basically the cheap solution. How can you destroy a vessel which cost over $70 million US dollars, up to $100 million? And so this is not the first example of such approach. You know that Ukrainian forces virtually without its own fleet destroyed or significantly damaged approximately every third ship of the Russian fleet in Black Sea. So, and for us, this is not like symbolic victory, probably not. Just our approach, because the Russian approach is to beat us with quantity of everything, and basically it's very tough to try to compete with Russia on its own field, just trying to have more artillery shells, more ships, more planes. It's like it's really very difficult task.
So
Obviously,
does
if you
that
will
mean
beat Russian with better technology,
yeah? Go ahead. You're saying beat Russians with better technology. I mean the fact that they have so much weaponry to use is something that the Russian ambassador has been boasting about on news channels here in the UK. And I wonder if the Senate in the US have just passed this bill giving $61 billion for Ukraine. As we speak, I think President Zelensky is in Munich asking for more money. Is there enough being given? Is it possible?
Right now, Rammstein group also is working right now with 50 countries in Ukraine Defense Contact Group working together online.
Yeah.
So, but when you say,
but Lord Dannett,
yeah.
Lord Dannett, the former head of the British Army, said to me earlier in the program that the war is at a very difficult place at the moment, that it's at a stalemate. Is that the case, and what do you need to change that?
Right. Okay. So let's first address your first question about whether the international help is enough. The word "enough" would be appropriate enough when the victory days come. So if there is still a country, Russia, which tries to eliminate my country, it means it's still not enough yet. Just to be very straight and precise, Russians they also changed their approaches, and they significantly increase their capabilities to produce weapons and ammunition. And definitely, we need just to change our approaches faster to be better on this field. And your second question was about
the war at the moment. Was
yeah,
about
stalemate.
Lord Janet
Yeah,
talking about stalemate.
Speaking about stalemate itself, I personally hate to say like this because if you play chess, you know that stalemate is the end of the game. This is not the end, definitely. And this is a situation when Russia tries to tear Ukraine in a long time positional, exhausting war, just to exhaust our forces and then to push us to go on some so-called peace talks, which will all about just annexing another territory and the time for Russia to prepare for another full-scale war. Is situation difficult? Yes, of course. Did Russia achieve any of its goals? No. Another thing that Russia at the same time never changed any of its goals, and so it still tries to basically capture Ukraine, destroy Ukraine as a country, and eliminate Ukraine as a political state. And therefore, it's just again it's just all about approach, all about being more effective, all about having shorter kill chain and more effective kill chain and basically cheaper kill chain.
Well, thank you very much for joining me.
Chaos will ensue in Ukraine. What I'd like to do is just describe this new product that I have. It is a series of lectures on pulmonology. It's to help inform the public so the public can become a citizen scientist, to be more discerning about medicine as it's being discussed in the mainstream news and in published research. So you can read the research and have your own conclusion, all right? What I have found is that there are too many people that have not enough foundation in the sciences and especially in medicine to be able to have a discerning opinion on certain things. So it is important for individuals that get that base knowledge, all right? So I created a series of lectures, 22 lectures that are part of the pulmonology module. And I will do different systems over time, you know, like neurology and cardiology and renal and, you know, other systems, right, for, you know, for the human body. So you have a really good foundation on how the body works and to be able to be a more informed citizen, to be able to read the research papers and decide for yourself the validity of the argument being portrayed in the actual research. Because all research has goods and bads. There's flaws in maybe the sample size or the conclusion, or it's proving a certain thought, disproving a certain thought. And as the body of knowledge starts to increase, there tends to happen to be some sort of consensus with some nuance, right? And I want you to understand that nuance. So I've created these modules. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and purchase the pulmonology module. You'll learn about the lung system, and it's only for $50. You get 22 lecture slides, and you will get a video lecture that accompanies the actual slide deck for 22 different lectures. I've populated about half of the module already. Each day, each business day, I put a new lecture up. It's very popular. So please go to my store, purchase the module for $50, and you will get an email of your code to log in to get into the actual lectures, and you'll be able to download the PDF and see the lectures as many times as you want, as long as you use that password for you. So you purchase it for $50, and you'll get an email that will give you the code to go into that particular module and those lectures and learn about pulmonology. Let me just shortly tell you what sort of topics that I go over in the pulmonology module, because it's vast. You'll learn a lot. Pulmonary embryology, pulmonary anatomy, pulmonary physiology, hemoglobin, pulmonary circulation, hypoxia, ventilation and perfusion, carbon dioxide, and all that whole physiology that's going on. Lung physical exam with percussion and auscultation. You'll actually hear different lung sounds. Pulmonary function tests. Obstructive lung disease, restrictive lung disease, treatment of COPD and asthma, pneumonia, pleural disease, lung cancer, sleep apnea, cystic fibrosis, tuberculosis, sarcoidosis, pulmonary embolism, and radiology, x-rays, how to read them. You learn a lot for just 50 bucks, all right? So please go to my store, go to classes, click the pulmonary, the pulmonology module for $50, and you'll get, shortly after that purchase, you will get a password to be able to enter the classes. And each day I upload a new lecture. You will learn a lot and be assistant scientist. So with that said, I appreciate the ones that have purchased the module. It is very popular. And please continue learning. You'll challenge your mind, and it'll help to slow down aging, and you'll learn how the body works, hopefully to improve your health. And not only that, you'll be more informed about the things that are being published in research and the things that are being said in the media. Now, what I want to do is get this perspective about, on Times Radio, about Trump wants chaos. All right.
Our democracy depends on
God.
It really does, folks. That's no joke.
Yeah.
That's why
we can't have Biden in the house.
We should stop wondering if Donald Trump is joking. We should take him at his word. And what he said is that he invites Vladimir Putin to invade any European country that has not paid what he deems to be the appropriate level of funding to NATO, regardless of the fact that he thinks it's money to the United States, which it's not. So this is a threat, a direct threat to European stability and security, and certainly to Americans as well. This is an invitation to Vladimir Putin to meddle in our elections, and it is treasonous talk.
Now, the US Senate has approved a $95 billion package of foreign aid, which includes $60 billion for Ukraine, after months of political wrangling, but it could still be blocked in the House of Representatives. Biden has been battling to get the bill through with the support of Democratic senators. Republican senators were divided and had previously voted it down, but 22 of them switched sides to approve the legislation, despite criticism from the former President Donald Trump. Well, at the White House tonight, President Joe Biden urged Republicans in the House of Representatives to pass the measure.
You can't walk away now. That's what Putin's betting on. He just flatly said that. Supporting this bill is standing up to Putin. Opposing it is playing into Putin's hands. As I've said before, the stakes in this fight extend far beyond Ukraine. If we don't stop Putin's appetite for power and control in Ukraine, he won't limit himself just to Ukraine. And the cost for America and our allies and partners is going to rise. For Republicans in Congress who think they can oppose funding for Ukraine and not be held accountable, history is watching. History is watching. History is watching. Failure to support Ukraine this critical moment.
How does history watch? It's our actions in the present that creates the history and dictates the probabilities of our future. How does history watch? I don't know. I don't know how that works. How does that work? It would be more honest to say America has done things that they shouldn't have been doing. They had failed policies for 30 years in the post-Cold War era that has led to some of the problems that we have. But now we're at a point where we're worried about the expansionism from Putin. That'd be a little bit more honest. But the way it's framed is that America isn't at fault here. America's heavily at fault here. History watching.
Will never be forgotten.
Well, Joel Rubin is a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State under the Obama administration. He gave me his reaction to the vote to approve the bill.
Well, Carol, there's two major ways to think about this package. First is on the policy, which is that it shows that there is still a large appetite, certainly in the Senate, for American leadership on global affairs, and that this national security supplemental, which is how it's being described, this is the kind of money that we need to be pumping into our allies in Ukraine and Israel, Taiwan, and elsewhere, and the Palestinian humanitarian assistance as well, to really show strong leadership. But politically, it's a real daunting challenge because, as you know, and as everybody is witnessing, Donald Trump has sort of put his grip now on the Republican Party, and the House is saying it doesn't even want to touch this. And the sort of MAGA wing of the Republican Party is rebelling at this, especially because it doesn't have any border security language, which of course they rejected only a week ago.
That is, just to pick you up on that, Joel, that is the fact that some of those Republicans, senators who were holding up this package were saying that they'd only back it if there was also money to shore up the United States southern border with Mexico.
Well, we have a joke here in Washington. They were for it before they were against it, and now they're showing that to be a truism. They were for this bill with border security measures until they were against it when Donald Trump told them not to be. Those border security measures were stripped out, and lo and behold, the national security foreign policy part persisted. And so the hypocrisy is just extraordinary. I don't think I've ever seen. I've been working in Washington for a couple of decades now on foreign policy and politics, and I have never seen such a hypocritical turnaround as I've seen on this bill, with the Republicans essentially jumping ship from what was their alleged priority and now complaining that it's not in it. It really makes your head spin.
Well, we've heard from President Biden tonight, and he was very critical of Donald Trump, who, as you say, had urged Republican senators to block this bill. I mean, is that just because Donald Trump doesn't want to be spending such huge sums on the war in Ukraine, which looks set to continue for so much longer? He wants to, of course, focus the funding back in the United States.
Oh, if it were only such a nice, innocent explanation like a good policy. It's because Donald Trump is a chaos agent. He wants chaos at the border. He wants chaos globally. He does not want to support American allies, certainly Ukraine in its fight against Russia. And he was very opposed to the border security measures that a union that has the Border Patrol representing that Border Patrol, that union endorsed Donald Trump in the last election. They supported the bill that Trump came out against. They had said it would help secure the border. He didn't want that because that would take away a major argument that he's trying to use in the election to say that Joe Biden is going to secure our borders. So it's all politics with Donald Trump. There's no policy on this. And thankfully, enough senators at least are there. And I think there will be a lot of House Republicans too if Democrats can find a way to dislodge it and get a vote on the floor despite the Speaker's objection.
Yeah, because just to be clear, this package of funding has still got to be approved by the House of Representatives. I mean, what do we know about what's going to happen there and when it could actually be finally approved?
So, Carol, this is where the arcanity of the legislative process really comes into play. Now, the way this works in short is that the bill is passed the Senate, and it's alive through the end of this calendar year. It does not have a deadline tied to it. In the House, they can choose to not take it up. And then Democrats are talking about doing what we call a discharge petition, which is getting a majority of House members to sign the petition saying, put the bill on the floor, even if the speaker is choosing not to do it. And this speaker says he won't do it. That would require 3 or 4 courageous Republicans to buck their leadership and sign it. It's possible, but that's the only way. Otherwise, the House will stop it and we will have no bill.
So it's still quite likely that this package might not go through.
There is a serious chance it will not go through, and it's going to take a lot of politics and a lot of pressure and a lot of legislative chicanery to try to dislodge it. But as it stands right now, it is stopped. And now the dynamics go into the House to see what can be done to dislodge.
We should stop funding Ukraine, period, and help support our border. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get my anti-Fauci boxes. I have it in a beginner's and an advanced edition. What do you get in the beginner's edition anti-Fauci box? Is Max 35, neutralizes pathogens. Just take a teaspoon of it a day. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon. You get magnesium and zinc, helps to boost up your immune system. You get vitamin D3, helps to get rid of cells through apoptosis, helps with gene expression, and it helps to absorb calcium. Turmeric is an antioxidant and brings down inflammation. Ashwagandha helps to control blood glucose levels and bring down that inflammation cardiovascularly. And that's what you get in the beginner's box. But in addition, if you get the advanced, you get either, you get to choose a 2 ounce, either in coconut for C60, or coconut for C60 or avocado for C60. 2 ounce. So the coconut, the avocado, or the coconut. So please pick one of them. But you take this, you take a full dropper or a teaspoon of it a day, and that will neutralize the free radicals to bring down the reactive oxygen species so you have proper cellular health and improve your mitochondria so it will have more ATP. When you do this, you will improve your tissues, they'll start to age slower, and not only that, you'll have more ATP to help with your immune system. So you can get the beginner's box that does not have the C60 or the advanced box that it does have the C60. The beginner's box costs $200. You get very high quality supplements. And if you get the advanced edition, it's $260. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the anti-Fauci boxes. Now back to the news.
But as of now, it is not law.
As you've been pointing out, this is all really wrapped up in the wider politics ahead of the presidential election there in the United States. We had President Biden also reacting to Donald Trump's comments suggesting not only that the United States might not support a NATO ally if that country wasn't spending enough on its own defense, but in fact that he would almost encourage some sort of attack on a NATO ally. I mean, was that a really serious suggestion, do you think?
I try to think that we should stop wondering if Donald Trump is joking. We should take him at his word. And what he said is that he invites Vladimir Putin to invade any European country that has not paid what he deems to be the appropriate level of funding to NATO, regardless of the fact that he thinks it's money to the United States, which it's not. So this is a threat, a direct threat to European stability and security, and certainly to Americans as well. This is an invitation to Vladimir Putin to meddle in our election, and it is treasonous talk. And it's unfortunate that we've seen a lot of Republicans now essentially say, he didn't mean it, he didn't mean it. I take Donald Trump at his word. I think he meant it. And I think it's what's going to be on the table for the American people to decide in November about what future we want for American global leadership. Do we want to honor our commitment and our allies, or do we want to walk away from them and empower our enemies?
There's a huge amount of concern here in the UK and indeed in other European capitals about those remarks and about what a future Trump White House, and he does appear to be ahead in the polls, what that could mean for US support for NATO and indeed its very membership of NATO. Is this really such a big issue there in the United States, though, or do you think that really Donald Trump is touching a nerve with voters when he does try to focus on that MAGA, Make America Great Again message?
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, there is a portion of the American electorate and the body politic that does not like foreign aid, does not want to support the war in Ukraine and the Ukrainians defending their own country. But overall sentiment in the United States is supportive of that kind of defense and is supportive of America's role in the world. But what has happened is one political party, the Republican Party, has been captured by the extreme isolationism of the MAGA movement. And Donald Trump, because he is going to be the presidential candidate, that means that all the Republicans in Congress who otherwise would like to be more global in their outlook are afraid to cross them, and they're going to be more afraid as
more global in their outlook or more aligned with the national security state. Because believe me, the national security state has been screwing over the American taxpayer.
So that's why I'm worried about the supplemental funding we're describing, because each day later, that is one day closer to the general election, and one less day likely that there's a likelihood.
Exodus, in many ways, really does teach us about a long-suffering, merciful God. Those plagues are there not to punish.
Likely that there's a likelihood that they will compromise because they don't want to undermine their own nominee in November.
Just finally, once again, we saw President Biden deliver those remarks about the passing of this package, but walking away before taking questions from the media. And this, of course, is after that devastating report that suggested that he couldn't even remember when he was vice president or indeed the date when his son died. He has appeared confused. He has got muddled up as to who's the leader of which country. I mean, how much concern is there within Democratic ranks as to whether Joe Biden really should be fighting for another term in the White House?
Well, if there's concern, there's no alternative that's been presented by the Democratic Party or the Democratic voters. I think that Democrats, we're behind Joe Biden. Without a doubt, there are verbal gaps. But, you know, he was exonerated in the special counsel report, whereas Donald Trump was recommended for indictment. And what Donald Trump says in public about NATO should scare people a lot more than President Biden confusing Mexico and Egypt after a full day of negotiation. So I think these verbal gaps are what we get with Joe Biden. But
don't you think? Don't you see on how aligned the national security state is with the media, and how they're trying to demonize the Trump supporter, and how they're trying to demonize Trump? When you start questioning the structure of the world, and you want to pull out one of those house of cards, and you want it to collapse so we can have a peaceful world and a more prosperous world instead of a never-ending national security state, then, whoa, you must be a Nazi. Whoa, you must be an isolationist. Whoa, you're a Trump supporter. They don't want to stop the money train into the national security state. Their policies have run amok.
Leadership and an effective policy program, and that's why he's not being challenged for this nomination coming up. And Democrats are bullish on him, but the case has to be made, of course, to the whole country that he's up for the job, just as he was for the last couple of years.
Well, that was Joel Rubin, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State under the Obama administration.
Yeah, oh, under the Obama administration. That's lovely. That's lovely. Let's see here. Let's take a look at what's going on with Russian ship. If there's any new news that's popped up here. Sun, the Independent. Aboard USS Eisenhower in Red Sea as ongoing military strikes seek to weaken Houthis. Let's play that.
And U.S. forces say their strikes on Iran-backed militants are weakening the group's capabilities. The U.S. has been launching near daily strikes on Houthi missile batteries in Yemen. Foreign correspondent Britt Clennett got a first-hand look at the operations on board the USS Eisenhower in the Red Sea and joins me live now from Manama, Bahrain with more. Britt, what's it like on these assault ships?
Well, look, it's high intensity, it's very loud, and on this one, this USS Eisenhower and the USS Bradley, which is a destroyer, look, there's a heightened alertness. You know, these guys are very confident that they can successfully degrade their ability, the Houthis' ability, that is, to attack from Yemen, and definitely there has been a downtick in Houthi attacks on shipping. So, you know, they've struck a grain ship on Monday, but that was the first attack in 6 days. But the fighter jets aboard the Eisenhower have been carrying out preemptive strikes, Diane, almost on a daily basis on Houthi missiles, the batteries there. As soon as they see that Houthis are loading them for a possible launch, that's when they strike. They even carried out one yesterday. Let's take a listen to what Rear Admiral Mark Miguez told me from the bridge of the Eisenhower.
I've seen a change in their tactics. I also have seen that we have reduced some of their capability. There has been what I'll call a downtick in their activity, which obviously we take constant assessment of. We're constantly watching them, and we have seen a reduction in just their activity overall.
Now, Diane, at the same time, these attacks have made the Houthis very popular inside Yemen, and the Houthis, their response has been one of defiance. And also, you know, we should note that Iran is continuing to supply them with arms and intelligence. So there are huge challenges that remain, Diane.
Britt, what does it look like on these ships when the U.S. launches a strike?
You know, as I say, it's high intensity. We saw fighter jets rip across the deck of the Eisenhower every few minutes. But this is also a long stint with no port call in sight. You know, they haven't been at port since November last year. This is quite unusual because they need to be in that position to fend off those Houthi attacks and to uphold freedom of navigation in that area. But the Navy officers we spoke to, they say that they'll stay for as long as it takes, Diane. It does remain tense. As I say, these warships are sustaining a very high level of preparedness with no clear end in sight. And this game of cat and mouse, Diane, in the Red Sea, it could go on for weeks or even months. Even during that 2-day embed on this ship, you know, we were reminded of the ever-present Houthi threats. You know, in the early hours of the morning, we were woken up by a Ready 15 alert signaling a defensive attack will be launched within 15 minutes. Now, they were acting on intel that at least one unmanned drone had been fired towards what's called the Bab el-Mandeb. That's a narrow choke point in the southern Red Sea, about 16 miles long. Now, this time they stood down on the decision to launch a counter-strike because other units were closer, but it really gives you an idea, as I say, the level of alertness that they need to sustain here.
It sure does. Foreign correspondent Britt Clennett in Manama, Bahrain. Britt, thanks for that.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show.
I want to see here. What's this one? Sky News. It just came out.
Ukraine says it has sunk another of Russia's battleships in the Black Sea. The Caesar Kunikov this time stationed near the Crimean Peninsula. That peninsula, of course, was annexed by the Russians back in 2014. Well, please say our military analyst, Professor Michael Clark, is here with us for more on this. Professor Clark, good to have you. So what do we know about what happened?
Yeah, Kamali, the ironies of history. I have to tell you this. Caesar Kunikov, the person I've been looking him up, the ship is named after Caesar Kunikov, a hero of the Soviet Union who was killed in Novorossiysk in the Second World War. He was a Marine. He was killed on this day, the 14th of February, 1943, 81 years ago today.
Like, can't be a coincidence, can it? They targeted it.
Well, you know, history doesn't repeat itself, but it shows how rhymes.
That's incredible.
And so, on the 81st anniversary of his death, the ship that bears his name appears to be hit, and it now looks as if we've got some confirmation that it's probably blew up.
Right.
We've got some idea of the damage, but you and I were speculating earlier on, was it sea baby drones or was it missiles? It might have been a combination. It looks as if it was several things at once. Right. The best way to kill a ship is to overwhelm it. And it does appear that it may have had ammunition loaded, which is what these Repucci class things have been doing, carrying ammunition backwards and forwards. And it looks as if that was the only hit. I doubt that that was the only hit on the superstructure, but it might have been that that was the lucky hit that got to the ammunition. But it looks as if it turned over, blew up. No survivors. And you've got to say, when 80-odd
overwhelmed the ship with multiple kind of vector points, and you think that a Ukrainian depleted military that's begging for help was able to do that? No. No. Special forces.
Sailors get killed all in one go like that. It's quite sobering. And any seafarer will tell you it's a victory, but it's a sort of it's a difficult victory.
Yeah. I mean, outside sort of the historic significance of the man's name and the individual that was the Marine that was killed as 81 years ago, what kind of impact does this have on the war, do you think?
Some, and this is one of 4 of the 9 landing craft that the Russians have got in the Black Sea Fleet. They've now destroyed, along with quite a lot of other ships. So they've destroyed about a quarter of the Black Sea Fleet, and the Russians can't add anything to the Black Sea Fleet because they're not allowed to send any warships through the Bosphorus, according to the Montreux Convention, which Turkey is upholding. So their Black Sea Fleet is getting smaller, and the strategic significance is that it makes the western part of the Black Sea unusable effectively for the Russians. Sevastopol, on the very tip of the Crimean Peninsula, was the naval base, the great historic naval base of the Black Sea Fleet, is more or less unusable now. And this ship was just off Alupka, again on the southern tip. Again, it shows it can be attacked there. It doesn't have to be near to the Ukrainian coast. The Ukrainians have attacked as far east as Novorossiysk, as in Russia proper. And so this is a strategic gain for the Ukrainians. They're making the most of the course. And it's a good day for them. And they haven't had that many good days recently. So,
and that's obviously on the sea. But what about the land war at the moment? What's happening?
Yeah. Well, on land, it's a different story. The Russians are pushing on all fronts with huge losses. And the Ukrainians look as if they're about to lose Avdiivka, which is very important to them. They've struggled at Avdiivka for many, many months. And it looks as if now, in the same pattern as Bakhmut and before that, Severodonetsk, and before that, Mariupol, that they're finally getting around the back of Avdiivka. There's still one line open, one line of retreat open. But if the Russians manage to close that in the coming days, and I guess that they might, then the Ukrainians will have to withdraw from it. And that will be a strategic loss. Bakhmut wasn't strategically so important. Avdiivka will be important, and the Ukrainians look as if they may lose it. So this victory in the Black Sea has to be set against what else is happening elsewhere on the front.
So I just really appreciate the historical significance of the landing of that ship. Professor Clark, thanks for that.
All right, so I want to play this.
Metagenics gets to the root of whole body health with pure, potent ingredients sourced from nature. Clinically tested and trusted by doctors for decades.
The newly appointed Ukrainian army chief now says the situation on the front lines is extremely difficult. But from the Black Sea, Kiev is reporting gains, claiming it has sunk another Russian warship. The Kremlin has so far refused to comment on the incident. Here's a detailed report.
The theater of the Russia-Ukraine war is shifting towards Crimea. The temperatures are rising in the Black Sea. As Russia continues to pound Ukrainian cities and Kiev playing to its naval strength, Ukraine has no large naval ships in its arsenal, but its cost-effective, explosive-laden Navy drones are doing all the damage to Russia's powerful Black Sea fleet. In a setback for Kremlin, Ukraine claims it sunk a Russian landing warship off the Crimean coast. Ukraine released a video that shows columns of smoke from the damaged ship. Kiev said naval drones sunk the Caesar Kunikov amphibious ship, hitting its port side. Ukraine says an armed forces and intelligence unit operation targeted the vessel in its territorial waters near Alupka. It was the second such hit on a Russian warship in 2 weeks. Earlier videos showed naval drones targeting the Russian missile-armed Cutter Ivanovets. The ship, costing $60 to $70 million, was on patrol on Lake Donoslav in western Crimea. In the 22-month-old war with Russia, Ukraine has staged many damaging attacks in Crimea on warships, airfields, the headquarters of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, and the bridge that connects the peninsula to southern Russia. With Kiev making gains in the asymmetric drone warfare, much of the Russian fleet has reportedly left the peninsula. As of December, a Ukrainian security official said it had destroyed 20% of Moscow's Black Sea Fleet, and if not turning the tide of the war outright, Ukraine's naval drones are certainly making a dent. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Olena Tregub is the Secretary General of the Independent Defense Anti-Corruption Committee, who is now joining us live from Kiev. Olena, welcome to WION World is One.
Hi, thank you.
Now, despite the Kremlin not commenting on the sinking of the Caesar Kunikov, will there be any repercussions on Ukraine for disabling or even destroying another Russian ship?
Well, I can tell you that it's wartime, and we can now trace that Ukraine, every 10 days, we hear news about Ukraine destroying a ship pretty much. The pace is destroying maybe 3 ships per month, and it has happened in the past, and it will happen in the future. Ukraine keeps producing those naval drones and ready to send them. So I do not think about any repercussion. The consequence of what's happening will be that Russia is about to lose its all Black Sea fleet.
Olena, the offensive in the Black Sea, what will be the impact of that on the war, on the ongoing war, especially on Ukraine, on Russia, and the countries that are dependent on grain passing through the Black Sea?
Well, right now we can see a very positive impact for the world, because Ukraine was able to unblock, at least partially, their sea blockade and create the grain corridor for exports of grain. And Ukraine was able to do it using our own technology and without Russian consent. Russia said that they want to keep blocking the sea, but by force, Ukraine was able to show that it doesn't really matter what Russia wants. If Russia cannot protect its Black Sea fleet, then Ukraine will be attacking it. And I think that it will only increase its focus of many Ukrainian institutions, including their military intelligence, that now was behind yesterday's attack. And the security service of Ukraine, they have their own task to attack the breach, the Kerch breach. So I think we will see increasingly that for Russia, it will be increasingly very hard to hold Crimea and to protect its Black Sea fleet. That's what we will see in the future, in my opinion.
Olena, this is the third warship to be destroyed by Ukraine in the Black Sea, and Russia has not commented about it. It's taking their time, or the Kremlin is taking their time to comment about this situation. What do you think will be their reaction, and why are they taking so much time to respond to such attacks?
Well, because it is a very detrimental thing for the reputation of Russian government and Russian military inside Russia. They lost the ship, and of course now Ukrainian military intelligence posted a video online of how it happened, a big explosion. It's all now in the public. So it's hard for them to create some story now, and they need to figure out how they commented for their reputation. The way they usually respond is that they start attack maternity houses, residential buildings. They start doing their genocidal, terrorism in response to that. But I just want to tell you that Ukraine in this war destroyed 24 ships already, and 10 of them from the Russian Black Sea fleet. So it's not the first and it's not the last.
All right, I've been talking to Olena Tregu, who's the Secretary General of the Independent Defense Anti-Corruption Committee. Olena, thank you very much for talking.
Ukraine says it has sunk another.
This was 18 hours ago on Sky News.
I'm gonna get out there.
But before we do that, I have to go to commercial because this is PNN. Please make sure you subscribe to all my channels. I have 3 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Also follow me on X and GETTR. That way you're updated, you get notifications, and you can follow my work. Please help support my work by sharing the links and asking your social network and your friends and family to follow me on all my channels. That way I can reach a larger audience and inform the public on information they need to know, because another crisis is going to come. It's coming, all right? So you need me to help you through this. So please inform the public, your little network, to follow my work. Also, please, if you would like to help support me, if you're either a domestic follower or an international follower, you can donate on my website. On the home page at the very bottom, you can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. Just click the links and they'll take you to the donation page. That website is the-studio-Reykjavik.com. It's the-studio-Reykjavik.com. Link is in the description of this video and all my videos. You can also click the special link underneath this video for Buy Me a Coffee. And that way it helps support my news coverage.
Western world earlier that Ukraine should prevail, it happened to be totally wrong. It was a grave mistake by Western leaders to believe that the Ukraine, with the Western assistance in money and weapons, can prevail. Russia cannot be beaten at all.
The International Institute for Strategic Studies has published a report today. It says the Russian armed forces have lost more than 3,000 main battle tanks in Ukraine, roughly as many as they had ready to deploy before the full-scale invasion 2 years ago. Moscow is now drawing on stored kit to replenish losses, trading quality for quantity. So you say that you're in a position of power now, but these reports show that you have lost more than 3,000 main battle tanks just in the last couple of years.
I haven't seen these figures. In fact, it is for the first time. But I can assure you that our military-industrial complex, which Ukraine doesn't have at all, it is now in full scale producing things which are needed for the front, whether it be tanks or artillery, munition, and all of that. And we do not need at all any foreign help or any assistance. We have sufficient capacities inside Russia to continue these things.
Russia is getting ballistic missiles and artillery from North Korea, and this is in violation of the UN sanctions that Russia itself supported.
No proof has been. I can assure you that if there were proofs of these things, we can already see it.
Your defense minister went to North Korea. They talked about defense cooperation. In fact, President Putin gave a letter thanking Kim Jong-un for, quote, strong support from the Democratic Republic of Korea for the special military operation in Ukraine. What was that for?
I'm not aware of this letter. I simply do not know. I'm not a military man. I'm a diplomat. I'm working in London. But I don't believe that we need anything from North Korea because we are self-sufficient now, totally self-sufficient, very differently from Ukraine. Because
so no Iranian drones coming there. You know, the Western intelligence has cited Iranian.
Once I have been at the arts exhibition near Moscow, and I have seen Iranian exhibitions over there. They're good experts in different kind of weapons, including drones. Probably we have had some cooperation in engineering.
I'm going to mention what Donald Trump, the former US president, says, and he says he'll end the war between Ukraine and Russia in 24 hours. Do you believe him?
It is difficult to predict in the first place who will be in the White House in January next year. So it is nearly a year from now. What's going to happen during this year also it is absolutely unknown.
But you would rather Donald Trump in the White House?
No, we do not say neither yes or no, because otherwise we will be immediately accused that we are supporting this president or that candidate. No, so we do not say about that. But what I will say, and what is important to understand, that at least Donald Trump is saying something about the end of the war.
Let's talk about, again, the human rights situation in Ukraine. An independent international commission of inquiry on Ukraine which was established by the UN Human Rights Council. They've said in multiple reports of indiscriminate attacks, war crimes committed by Russian forces. They've talked about torture, rape, other sexual violence, deportation of children. They've said that they've released a new report to say that, you know, in Mariupol between February and May 2022, thousands of civilians were left dead and injured.
But they say nothing about the recent events in Lysychansk, where Ukrainians has shelled on Sunday the marketplace during the hour where all families has gone out, and they killed 30 people immediately by cluster bomb, which are forbidden.
I don't have of that report, but I want to ask you.
You know, I'm just telling you, because these reports, they are unilateral. They are looking only one side of it, and they do not want to look on the other side of it.
But you would admit that these crimes, which have been described in some instances as war crimes of torture, rape, sexual violence, have taken place.
We can admit anything which will be unbiased, bilateral, and objective. These reports that you have cited, they are unilateral reports.
But you would admit that the situation.
What about the war crimes that the national security state is doing against the American public by breaking constitutional enshrined liberties with surveilling the society and gathering information illegally, going after certain presidential candidates, going after presidents after they're in the office? What about those war crimes? What about the war crime of allowing illegal immigration to happen and overflow across the southern border and parts of the northern border, but primarily the southern border, and cause instability in these states? What about those war crimes? You're allowing an invasion, national security state. Seems to me that's treasonous. Maybe you should be hanging from a tree. Like Burns, maybe Burns should be hanging from a tree. Just swing with Fauci. Swing, swing, swing. And since we're talking about Fauci, please go to my store and get the anti-Fauci boxes that I have. I have a beginner's box and an advanced box. In the beginner's box, you get max 35. Take a teaspoon of it a day. If you're not feeling well, take 1 or 2 tablespoons. You get magnesium and zinc, great to boost up your immune system. You get turmeric, bring down inflammation. It's also an antioxidant. Ashwagandha, control blood glucose levels, bring down inflammation. Vitamin D3, allow for apoptosis of infect cells. Also helps with gene expression and absorb calcium. Get my vitamin D3. That's in the beginner's box, anti-Fauci beginner's box. In the advanced box, you get everything I just mentioned, but you also get to choose a 2-ounce C60 avocado or a 2-ounce C60 coconut. Why do you take this? To bring down free radicals. By bringing down free radicals, you're going to have cellular health and your tissues are going to be healthier. Your mitochondria is going to be healthier and you're going to boost more ATP. Your tissue is going to age slower. And by having more ATP, you're going to have more energy for a proper immune system. So for the beginner's box, the anti-Fauci beginner's box, it's $200. You get very high quality supplements for $200. In the advanced box, where you also get the C60 2-ounce, you will be charged $260. So advanced box, $260, beginner's box, $200. It's very high quality, and it'll help to boost up your immune system and help to promote a healthier you. Slow down that aging process, boost up that immune system so you can take charge of your health. Now, you can take my advice or not take my advice. You get very high quality supplements for $200 for the beginner's box and $260 for the advanced anti-Fauci boxes. Back to the war in Ukraine.
In Mariupol, some of the issues that we've seen right across the country committed by Russian forces, indiscriminate attacks, some of the reports that have been done by Human Rights Watch, this independent inquiry, they have taken place.
Yodar, go to Mariupol now. Look at it. It's a new rebuilt, totally rebuilt city now, port of it. I just looked at a report from it. It is amazing how beautiful
Why
it is.
is that necessary? I mean, I've been to Mariupol before the war, and it was a perfectly fine, full of Ukrainians.
I would appreciate.
Why did that need to happen?
The people are returning to Mariupol. It is now becoming, not yet, but it is now becoming beautiful city.
But you admit that in order to get to what you're saying Mariupol is now, it needed to be destroyed in the way that it was by Russian forces.
They could surrender earlier than that. They could surrender Mariupol much earlier than trying to make a fighting place of it.
Do you admit that these sorts of war crimes took place across Ukraine?
Well, I'm sure that on every side, everybody, in this case, Secretary General of the United Nations is saying that he condemns every crime committed, whether it be in Ukraine or in the other place by anybody.
You call it a special military operation. The world calls it an invasion. You said there would be no invasion in January 2022.
Well, if you will return to that days, I have several times already answered this question also to your station, to Skies. I was saying at that time what I was aware of, including my minister.
So were you surprised by what happened?
I would say that I was surprised because the tendency in general in relations between Russia and the West, Russia and the United Kingdom, was continued to deteriorate for several years.
And what are relations like now with Rishi Sunak?
We have no relations with Rishi Sunak, given that every day he's insulting, nearly insulting our president, the government, and all of that stuff. So we have no political relations with UK.
British and other NATO generals and ministers are warning of the threat of a large-scale conflict with Russia in the next few years. What's the view from Moscow?
They like it very much. It is. They like to press it. I will tell once again that there are two things in it. One thing is to show to us that if we will continue fight Ukraine, then we will have to meet NATO. This is one. It's a threat. Second is that, of course, generals are trying to get more money from the budget for the reforms for the forces, especially in the UK. And I will tell you what President Putin has said in his interview to Tucker Carlson recently. We have nothing, no interest in Poland. We have no interest in Latvia, Estonia, or any
countries
other
are concerned that Russia is going to test Article 5 in the next.
No, they can imagine to themselves whatever they can. But the answer was absolutely straightforward. That we have no interest. We are not eager. We are not.
You integrate Ukraine into NATO, and you will test Article 5.
There was no interest in the invasion of Ukraine.
No interest because there is no interest in Poland or other Baltic countries, and we fully understand that any escalation beyond Ukraine will bring a world conflict, where a destruction of everything. So we fully understand that, and we don't know. We cannot support this.
Well, Donald Trump has encouraged Russia to invade any NATO ally that's not paying a minimum of 2% of its GDP on defense. Do you think President Putin is tempted by this?
I think it's a joke by Donald Trump. It's of course very unrealistic. We will see what he's going to say if he will continue his campaign.
Will Russia interfere in the U.S. elections so that Donald Trump
what we should do?
Will Russia interfere in the U.S. elections?
We have no means to interfere in any election campaign.
Let's talk about the Russian elections.
Will the Russians interfere in the American election? Why can't journalists omit what really happened? That is, the national security state tried to prevent a certain candidate from getting into office. And they wanted to blame it on the Russians. Bullshit.
Coming up in the next month, any voices that oppose Vladimir Putin is silenced. We've seen what's happened to Alexei Navalny. We've seen Boris Nadezhdin, who was evicted and prevented from going any further in the elections because he opposes the war.
Boris Nadezhdin, he is an interesting figure. I will say in our politics, he has got some support in the different circles. And for them, he should be just more careful about building up his election basis because when he has brought all these signed supporters, list by supporters, there were lots of discrepancies, unfortunately.
Because he opposed Vladimir Putin?
No, not because of that. Because he has carefully...
That's what he says. That's what the world believes. Because he was speaking up against the war, because he was standing in opposition to Vladimir Putin, is now being prevented from taking part in the election.
As I have said, that his voice has been heard.
Well, when we know what the outcome of the Russian elections will be...
No, we do not know. So it's a democratic process. Let us see what will be.
Why bother with the pretense of a democratic process when we know the outcome?
What I can say, it is, I do not know which example to take. Of course, there are democracies has very many faces in it.
Going forward, if there was a negotiation with Ukraine, what would it look like for you? What would it take to end this conflict?
Yes, it's a good topic. But to discuss it seriously, first of all, we need that the president of Ukraine will reject the decree that he put it on himself not to conduct negotiations. And second, that in the West, leaders that are supporting now financially and with armament, especially Ukraine, they should recognize that it was a mistake.
You don't recognize that invading Ukraine was a mistake?
No, it was a necessary step, unfortunately.
Ambassador, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for your questions and your time.
Why didn't she ask some of the questions like about the 5 pressure points that Putin talked about? This just to get clarification, because you're a journalist. Nope. Want to blame Russia, want to blame Russia, want to blame Russia. That's all they want to do. They don't want to blame the national security state. They don't want to blame the encroachment of NATO. Nope. Sad thing is both parties are at fault, the Russians and the US. But, what's starting to happen is we're getting a footing of a Cold War.
Yikes. Most shampoos and pomades are full of chemical fillers, making you look like your old man.
Ceasefire in Ukraine? Well, Russian President Vladimir Putin's suggestion of just that was rejected.
Before we get the breaking news from the Hill and the pontification of Bobby, all right, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the pulmonology module. For $50, you get 22 PDFs and accompanying lectures that I do to describe the complexity of the pulmonary system. You will learn a lot about how the lungs work, and this will allow you to become a citizen scientist and reduce the power difference between your physician and you. So when you're seeing your physician, when you're seeing your doctor, for whatever reason, you are more informed and you can be more discerning. And every day, every business day, I issue a new lecture in the module. There's about 10 of them already published. And for $50, you'll have access to 22 lectures with its slide deck. Now, what's in the module? Let me read them off. Pulmonary embryology, pulmonary anatomy, pulmonary physiology, hemoglobin, pulmonary circulation, hypoxia, ventilation and perfusion, carbon dioxide, lung physical exam. I'll show you this. I'll show you the places to put the stethoscope and also the sounds that you'll hear through the stethoscope. Pulmonary function tests, obstructive lung disease, restrictive lung disease, treatment for COPD and asthma, pneumonia, pleural disease, lung cancer, sleep apnea, cystic fibrosis, tuberculosis, sarcoidosis, pulmonary embolism, and chest x-rays. You will learn a lot about how the lungs work, diseases of the lung, the physiology of the lung, the anatomy of the lung, the embryology of the lung. So you can be an informed citizen and become a citizen scientist and be more discerning and reduce that power imbalance between your doctor and yourself. So please go to my store. For $50, you get a lot of information. And after this module is fully populated, then I will do additional modules like cardiology and renal and neurology, all the systems. You will learn a lot. It'll take time for me to do all these lectures, but you will learn a lot in the end. For just one module, the pulmonology module, it's $50. You get a lot of information. You get to download the PDF files, and you'll have an accompanying lecture video to describe that slide deck. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and purchase the module. It's very popular. You'll learn a lot.
The United States, per 3 Russian sources with knowledge of these discussions, according to Reuters. The U.S. source denied that there had been any official contact and said the government would not engage in talks unless those talks included Ukraine. Again, that's according to reporting from Reuters.
A senior Russian official reportedly said, quote, the contacts with the Americans came to nothing. And another Russian source said the Americans told Moscow they would not discuss a possible ceasefire without the participation of Ukraine.
So the detail here, if this did actually take place, was that Vladimir Putin was not going to give up any of the territory he had acquired in the course of this war, but was willing to freeze the conflict in the current situation and have no more fighting, which would be a good thing to stop having people on both sides of the conflict, but in particular Ukraine, the invaded party, continue to have this awful loss of life. Obviously, Zelensky's government wants to retain total control of Ukraine. In an ideal world, no, they were invaded and they should not have to give up any territory. Russia's invasion was unjustified and has resulted in a lot of suffering and catastrophe. That is all true, but we have to live in reality. And in reality, it's just going to be more and more casualties to repel Russia from Ukraine, if that is even possible to do. Our own military advisors doubt that it's possible. Many Ukrainian military experts doubt that it's possible, in which case it seems like a negotiation that stops any further loss of life, or frankly, further loss even of territory in Ukraine. What if Russia continues to be more successful? Of course, the Ukrainians should be involved in these talks. I see no reason for them not to be. But if Zelensky is still taking a maximalist position and then infinitely expecting us to fund it, look, he's going to be out of luck. Now, President Biden has been tweeting over and over and over again condemnation of Republicans for history is watching because you're not going to send more funding. Maybe history is watching if you're not willing to have talks that are going to actually end this war.
I mean, the irony is that a ceasefire could be seen as giving the Biden administration and Democrats and pro-funding Republicans more of an opportunity to rally the troops and get the funding out the door. I mean, part of what's going on is that, Ukraine has run out of resources. It's genuinely having a really hard time maintaining its standing in this war because it doesn't have the funds, the weaponry required to do so. I saw the New York Times making some positive hay out of a Russian ship that was just sunk by Ukraine. But the article also has to acknowledge that that's a rare kind of bright spot in terms of Ukraine's successes in this war on land. They're really, really struggling. Yeah. But I think the converse is actually true, that it's not that having a ceasefire would give Biden and pro-Ukraine Congress members an opportunity to try to rally one of these packages through. And the reality is that they think that if the war pauses, if there's a ceasefire, they lose their urgency argument for pushing one of these packages through, especially now in the middle of this election year, especially with the instincts, the needs that Trump sees, the political ramifications for Donald Trump and being able to say that.
Now let's just assume that she's right. Do a special force operation and sink a Russian ship, upset Putin, and they'll do some offensive against Ukraine. And then in the news, they'll blow it all up. And then Congress will go, we need a Russia bill to save Ukraine. If you don't think that that Ukraine is orchestrated, you got some problems.
In some ways, I think Biden could take a political win. They negotiated an end to this war, and we no longer had to send them any money. Maybe Democrats wouldn't see it as a win, but a lot of actual voters would see it that way.
It's not about politics. Ukraine has been a losing
I wish it was about
for Biden forever. Same with Israel. He doesn't care that Ukraine is unpopular. He doesn't care that Israel is unpopular. War is never popular, and there are bipartisan majorities of people who want to go to war all the time because it's just not about what the people want. So the desire to weaken Russia, to have global dominance, to be able to put our weapons where we put them, whether it's Ukraine or it's Israel, is always a motivating factor here. And everything else is just public perception management. And, interestingly, this is a kind of a no man's zone we're in right now with these Republican holdouts. Being willing to and able to hold things up because of the close margins in both chambers. And I really don't know what's going to happen. I do think that it's tough. It's a tough ceasefire look for Ukrainians after having spent so many human resources, having lost so much life, only to end up with a loss of territory basically where you were years and years ago, after being misled into thinking that there was possibly a better outcome here. And, you know, maybe there is a world in which a certain kind of aid and support, perhaps not from America, but from a global community, could enable them to push Russia out. But the experts seem to be unwilling to articulate a plan in which that is likely. And that suggests to me that it's almost next to an impossibility.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like some cost fallacy, right? And you're like, well, we've already spent so much to get to this point. We got to keep spending or else that will be wasted money. No, it's already wasted. All you can do is waste more money and lives. Again, who are they're having recruitment problems for their army? Who's going to use these weapons we're giving them? Where are these weapons going to end up? Frankly, if then they're killed and more territory is taken, do those weapons fall into Russians' hands eventually? We've had this whole problem in the Middle East in the past with terrorist groups eventually arming themselves with these.
It's a bottomless pit that the national security state wants. Just keep on sending weapons, keep on producing stuff for Lockheed Martin. Just keep on funding, keep on funding. They don't want Trump to get into office. Why? Because Trump probably in 48 hours will shut it all down. No, you can't do that.
We've left behind in Afghanistan and Iraq, and there's been so much terrific and horrifying reporting on what ISIS has been able to do with weapons they got from us indirectly. This is that situation all over again, and it just seems very like it could be. I mean, you're right. They don't see it that way because the elites in both parties are so much more hawkish than the people, but I think it could be taken as a real victory at a time Biden sorely needs one if he were to think it through a little bit more. Now, Elon Musk also wants to see the United States stop funding Ukraine in its fight against Russia. He wrote on Twitter, I believe, having these boys die for nothing is wrong and needs to stop. Yeah, sentiment. Again, he's not alone in expressing that. A lot of people are expressing that. So I believe we also have a video of
another kind of political gaffe has emerged from the Biden administration. The ongoing nature of these two conflicts has exposed how unprincipled some of the positions this country takes toward foreign aid really are. So spokesperson Matt Miller was asked recently about whether or not there was an expectation that Israel pay to rebuild Gaza the same way State Department spokespeople have said that Russia has an obligation to rebuild Ukraine, and you'll never guess what the answer is. Let's take a look.
But does Israel bear any responsibility for paying for the reconstruction of Gaza? Or do they get to force it off on others?
So the situations are not at all.
But they're all conflicts, and I realize that World War II is over and the Ukraine war is not over, but neither is the Gaza war. And you're saying that Russia right now has to pay for the damage they caused in Ukraine. So I'm just wondering, would you say the same that Israel should pay for at least some of the damage that it has caused in Gaza, even though it's fighting, for what you say is a completely justifiable, or what is a completely justifiable?
So what I would say on that matter is that one of the things that we have heard through the Secretary's diplomacy in the region is that there are countries who are ready to step up and help pay for the reconstruction of Gaza.
So the posture of that right there, right, is that they're saying, does Israel have a right to rebuild? If this is a righteous war, then why would they be obliged to rebuild Gaza? And so there's kind of this talking out of both sides of your mouth. If Israel is doing everything that it's entitled to do to defend itself, etc., why would it not just build it, rebuild, pay to put back up what it has just destroyed? And so Miller's trying to get around that by saying, well, it wouldn't be necessarily Israel that's paying the money to rebuild Gaza. It would be all of these other countries, thus not casting any kind of implication on the righteousness of Israel causing this destruction in the first place.
Well, I mean, I don't know. We helped rebuild Europe after.
Right. But was there an obligation to do so, or was that just the way the history shook out and a choice to do so?
Yeah.
The question is there an obligation for Israel to?
It was part of the Marshall Plan, honey. It was to stabilize Europe because it lost all of its manufacturing capability. It lost, I mean, everything was destroyed. So it's not the way history just shook out. I mean, the Marshall Plan was well crafted and well thought out. Now, having a stable Gaza that's prosperous will be beneficial to Israel and to the Palestinians. Now, if Russia, okay, now think about this. If philosophically Russia has to pay for the destruction it has ensued in Ukraine because the war was not just, what about the national security state paying back the American taxpayers on the cost of the Vietnam War? Or what about paying back the American taxpayers on a ill-conducted war in Afghanistan and Iraq post 9/11, where the CIA actually created Osama bin Laden? What about the American taxpayers being paid back by the national security state with the overthrow of governments in South America and Iran?
That the idea that an obligation might only attach if your destruction was in Iran in the first instance.
I see. More rising right after this. Stay with us.
Yeah. So that is the intellectual droppings of the Hill. And it should not be called the Hill. It should be just called the Bird Shit Hill. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the anti-Fauci boxes that I offer, either the beginner's box or the advanced box. You get, in the beginner's box, you get Max 35, structural nanosilver liquid, magnesium and zinc to boost up your immune system, turmeric to bring down inflammation and it's an antioxidant, ashwagandha root brings down glucose levels and inflammation, vitamin D3 to help with apoptosis and gene expression. That's the beginner's box for $200. And if you want to get the advanced box, you can either get coconut C60 2-ounce, avocado C60 2-ounce, or coconut C60 2-ounce. The advanced box costs $260. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Why do you want to take this? Take a teaspoon or a full dropper of this every day to bring down free radicals, slow down the aging process, and boost up the health of the mitochondria and your ATP. Those are the two boxes that I offer. I offer a lot more anti-aging boxes on my store. So please go to the store and take a look at those boxes. They are well curated and they have, very, very high quality supplements. You follow the protocol, they'll slow down the aging process, boost up your immune system, and you'll start to notice health benefits in a very short while. I also have skincare boxes that you can take a look at. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the health supplements and also the module that I have, the pulmonary module, where you'll learn about pulmonology and how the lung system works, some of the diseases that happen, what's in a physical examination, how do you test flow with certain types of devices, the embryology, the anatomy, for only $50. Get 22 lectures. Please go to the store and sign up for the pulmonology module for $50. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.